I feel like we're in the middle of a street crossing right here.
Yeah.
Thanks. First of all, it is great to be back in Jersey City. It's great to be here with my very good friend and phenomenal leader for this district, Rob Menendez, who, if you have not spent enough time with, you got to spend more time with, because no one fights harder for the families of Essex County, for the families in Hudson County, and they're very lucky to have Rob as their new voice in Congress. And I want to thank Rob for his fight, for standing here today and standing up for hardworking middle-class families up against New York's absurd $23 a day proposed congestion tax. As many of you know, this past Friday, without conducting a full environmental impact study, the U.S. Department of Transportation blindsided families across Jersey and New York, allowing the MTA to take the next step with their cash-grabbing, anti-environment congestion tax plan. That's why we're here today, to make sure the Department of Transportation hears the voices of the hardworking middle-class commuters who will be forced to pay this absurd $23 a day, $5,000 a year congestion tax, and to listen to those voices of young children whose health will be harmed directly by the increased air pollution the congestion tax will cause. Yet, rather than listen to those families, including the 75% of those who testified in the hearings against the congestion tax, the U.S. Department of Transportation is choosing to ignore the facts that the MTA submitted to the federal government in their own reports about the serious environmental effects of congestion pricing. You heard me right. In the MTA's own report last year, they admitted to the Department of Transportation that the congestion tax will not only cause more traffic here at the Hudson Tunnel, and at the Lincoln Tunnel, and the GW Bridge, but that it will also have a serious impact on air pollution affecting our children and families. Now, the DOT's response to all this was unbelievable. Don't bother submitting a more in-depth environmental impact study. It's what they said last week. Little odd for an administration that claims to be committed to protecting the environment. A little odd for us, given how committed we both are to protecting the environment. As the New York Times reported on March 28th, let me be specific about the MTA's own admissions. Again, you can read this story in the New York Times. It'll give it a little more color. The MTA acknowledges in their report to the federal government that if their congestion tax program goes into effect, there will be more cars diverted here at the tunnel and at trucks to northern New Jersey by the GW Bridge and to the outer boroughs just outside the tolling zone, hurting lower-income families. Again, that's in the MTA's report. The MTA said the Bronx alone could face 700 more trucks every day and countless more trucks by Fort Lee and in northern New Jersey. As a result, the MTA estimates in their report that there will be increases in traffic, pollutants, and mobile air toxins through 2045 in the Bronx, Staten Island, Nassau County, and Bergen County. Specifically, according to the MTA's report, there will be increases in particulate matter, nitrogen oxide, and carbon monoxide in Bergen County, as well as toxins like formaldehyde in the outer boroughs in northern New Jersey. You heard me right, in formaldehyde. Again, they admit this in the MTA's own report that they submitted to the federal government. This isn't some made-up thing. If you'd like, I'll give you the page numbers separately. I got them here. In the Bronx alone, they predict that the diverted traffic will increase soot from truck traffic by about 5%. The MTA's environmental assessment is 900 pages long. I get it. It takes a long time to read. I hope the federal government actually read it. But these are just a few of the most egregious findings on how the congestion tax will hurt the environment. It's an anti-environment proposal. I'm happy again to get you the page numbers. The negative environmental impacts on families will be so bad that the MTA is prepared to spend, ready for this, and Rob alluded to this, $130 million from tolling to try to mitigate the effects of the pollutants in the Bronx and parts of the outer borough. How much for New Jersey's pollution? Not a nickel for New Jersey. Their proposed solution includes having to install new air filtration units near schools, more vegetation, and spending $25 million on asthma treatment programs in New York. Absurd. Wait, so they admit it's so bad that they actually have to put $25 million for asthma treatment programs. That's how bad the congestion tax will be on our children. Because of the congestion tax moving pollution elsewhere, they're going to have to set up this asthma program. If that's not environmental guilt, on New York's MTA's conscience, I don't know what is. Again, this is not our offices creating these stats. It's from the MTA and their 900-page report themselves, from a mismanaged organization that will literally do anything for an extra buck. Anything to stem the bleeding of their woefully mismanaged organization that a New York judge called, quote, an orgy of overtime fraud. Even Governor Hochul recently acknowledged the congestion tax is part of her, quote, plan to rescue the MTA, right? They admit it's just about cash. The MTA is losing $2 billion a year and blew all $15 billion they received from the federal government during the pandemic. Studies show that last year they lost about $500 million, the MTA, to fare skippers. People who just decided to ride and not to pay, right? And now they want us in Jersey to pick up the tab to help stop the bleeding into the MTA's outrageous black hole, right? It's literally a black hole. New York State under Governor Hochul, I mean, instead of focusing dollars toward helping out the MTA, she actually approved $600 million to go toward building a new stadium for the Buffalo Bills. I love football. I love the Giants. I love football. But really, shouldn't you take that $600 million if you've got such a problem with the MTA and help the MTA instead of turning to Jersey and saying, oh, why don't you all, your families, your hardworking nurses, labor, right? Why don't you guys pick up the cost for our problems? That's what New York is saying to Jersey. So what do? We sound the alarm on the negative environmental impacts of the proposed congestion tax. I will be submitting a formal comment this week, because there's a 30-day comment period, demanding that the Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration reconsider their anti-environmental decision. They should ask the MTA for a full environmental impact study. It just makes sense. When you know all the environmental impacts, potential environmental impacts from the congestion tax, wouldn't the federal government want to have a full, in-depth study? Doesn't that just make sense? The DOT has a 30-day public review period to make this right and order a full environmental impact of the MTA's proposed congestion tax. Here in Jersey and the outer boroughs, we have 30 days of public review to get comments in to the DOT. We plan to fight. We plan to fight hard over the next 30 days and beyond. That's what we do in Jersey when someone's trying to stick it to us. Governor Murphy has already indicated that the state is looking at legal options. And of course, you can turn to the state and to Governor Murphy's office for more details. I'll be working closely with my colleagues, Democrats like the incredible leader here, Rob Menendez, and my Republican House colleagues from Jersey and New York as part of the Anti-Congestion Tax Caucus to move expeditiously on this review, on looking at this review, and of course, two pieces of legislation that we've introduced. The Anti-Congestion Tax Act, which will freeze federal dollars sent each year to the MTA if they move forward. That's about $2 billion a year the MTA gets from the federal government if the agency insists on barreling ahead with this $23 a day plan. It will also amend the U.S. tax code to offer commuters a federal tax credit at the end of the year equal to the amount they paid in the congestion tax. That will protect New Jersey and New York drivers from this absurd tax. Nicole Malliotakis and I have also introduced legislation demanding a full audit of the MTA to figure out what they did with the $15 billion they received from the federal government during the pandemic. Where did it all go? They're allowing fare skippers to $500 million a year. Is that how they run their agency? I think the country deserves to know, especially if they're turning to Jersey to bail them out. Again, you couldn't ask for stronger advocates of mass transit, as you heard Rob talk about, with what he wants here for his constituents. The bipartisan infrastructure bill, I helped write that and pass it. That's all about more money for mass transit, more resources for New Jersey transit. Those are important to help build the Gateway train tunnel. We want to reduce pollution. The congestion tax will increase pollution. We want to help families commuting, whether that's from Vernon, New Jersey, Sussex County, Warren County, where there are no mass transit options, Bergen County, where there aren't enough mass transit options. But the idea to turn around $23 a day, plus the $17 to go through this tunnel, plus gas, plus parking for hardworking families is out of the question. It's completely outrageous. We just simply can't afford it. And last thing I want to say, Rob Menendez was on the Port Authority board. He did a phenomenal job. Nobody in our delegation understands the Port Authority like he does, and the impacts this could have on the capital projects, right? You're talking about things like the new proposed bus terminal in New York City, resources for the PATH train, work at LaGuardia and Newark and Kennedy airports, the port, the aging GW Bridge. You're talking, by their own estimations, we believe there will be $1 billion impact from congestion tax on the Port Authority's capital project plan. So what do we do with that? How do we fill that new hole that's suddenly found? The MTA is basically literally robbing Peter to pay Paul to boost the revenue for the MTA. I'd like to understand what they're going to do about the Port Authority. So with that, I just want to say we're going to keep fighting this over the next 30 days. We're going to keep fighting the cash-grabbing MTA. I urge Mr. Lieber and the MTA to reconsider. We urge the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration, to reconsider and to actually study the full impacts on the environment, on our children, and our families. In the greatest country in the world, it's the least we can do. We got to work together. I know that if we do, our best days will always be ahead. God bless. Thank you.